We are live, May 15th, 2025. This is Dawn of a New Day. Hi, Jack and the Murder Hornet. Post a link to that below. So let's see. I think we have a couple of things to talk about today, namely the Final Destination. But before I start, I want to make sure the audio is working. We had some gremlin activity yesterday. Not too bad, but I'm in the process of revamping everything. I want to be up to speed with my OBS and everything else. I want to get back to our format with the Godzilla sound effects as soon as possible. What's up, Frank Murr? Well, I went out today and I saw Final Destination in the theater. I had the option of watching it on a bootleg, but I think you have to get the whole picture, and you can't get that on your phone. You have to be in the theater. You have to be in the black cube, and you have to be witnessing it in the context in which everyone else sees it as well, how it's framed. And that would include trailers. And this one was preceded by a trailer for some movie with Dave Franco, Luigi. But more specifically, I think related to this was Fantastic Four. And there's another one, another Marvel, the Thunderbolts, and the preview has the same thing. There's been this repeated theme of something coming down from the sky. That's been like a reoccurring theme, as does Superman and the Man Who Fell to Earth, Starman. This whole savior concept, it's been in the air lately. Something in the air, Fallout most likely. All right, let's see. Hello from Wisco, says Truman B. Kevin Mooring's here. All right, we have about 19 people. Let's wait until we have a full house. Let's get about 33 people. Okay, a couple of other things besides Final Destination. The former FBI Director James Comey has made a threat against Trump using the expression 8647, which apparently is code for 8647, 86 Trump. And that's been going around for some time. That was referenced a while back, but it's kind of covert and deniable. But this was kind of blatant. And it was pointed out by Laura Loomer. And Laura Loomer is the one who's always pointing out the predictive programming for the Trump assassination attempts. And then another story here. You have, I think his name is Haywas, the guy from the head of archaeology in Egypt, was on Joe Rogan's show. And Rogan doesn't seem happy because it seems that a lot of the mystery around the pyramids and who built them is unnecessary, that the answers have been available to the public and published for decades. And Art Bell ignored it. Joe Rogan brought the stuff up, and the whole aliens made the pyramids debunked. No giants, no aliens, no Egyptians did. And Rogan sounded a little let down. We'll get to that as well. We'll get to the Trump. Let's just go ahead and start with the Trump stuff, because Don Jr. said, just look at this here. James Comey just now casually called for my dad to be murdered. James Comey casually calling for my dad to be murdered. This is who the Dem media worships. And so here's Comey, and in Seychelles, so this might have taken some time, 8647. 8647. Laura Loomer said, wow, former FBI Director James Comey just posted this on his Instagram 2 hours ago with the caption, quote, cool shell formation on my beach walk. It is a picture of shells in the form 8647. This is a call for the assassination of President Trump by the former FBI director. And this is going somewhat viral. Lots of people, Steven Crowder and others, they're all pointing at this. 8647. And then this seems related to me. U.S. government buildings now appear to be putting up giant banners of Donald Trump's face, echoing authoritarian dictatorships. And you have Born in the USA, Bruce Springsteen on this sermon about how bad this stuff is. But look here, you'll note beside the giant picture of Trump, you've got Lincoln. And this will figure into our discussion of Final Destination. Again, Donald Trump Jr. draws attention to it. So it's not just us. We've been noting this stuff for a long time, but this is pretty blatant, a bit of foreshadowing. And then we'll get into this. Dr. Zaya Hawass, based in Egypt. He's been a renowned Egyptologist for like 57 years. He's the Minister of Antiquities. And in this long conversation with Joe Rogan, and I listened to most of it, he kept on debunking Rogan's stuff. And Rogan is like, well, maybe they found it and put that other light. No, he's like, no, this is how they move the blocks. It's not a mystery. And Joe's like, well, what's the technology they used to get it up? And he's like, these are just, the idea that it's unexplained has been debunked. So that's kind of a side topic. And something related, there was an astrologer who was arrested for making a prediction about an earthquake that set off a bit of a panic, and it didn't happen. And this type of thing just kind of stood out to me as kind of interesting, since we're talking about predictions, but, got charged with creating something of a mass panic. Some TikToker, I saw this in the India Today. TikTok astrologer arrested after earthquake predictions go viral. So if Jurassic Liars goes viral and a bunch of people flee Seattle next month, are they going to knock on his door? So we'll follow up with the 8647 thing later, but I want to jump right into the review of Final Destination Bloodlines. Spoiler alerts, but we give spoilers here for what's going to happen on the world stage, not just the movies. And if you're still at the point where you don't want spoilers because you want to be entertained, we can't really help you at that point. This is propaganda disguised as entertainment. The entertainment is just a side effect. It's just like sugar, it's a sweetener in the poison. Okay, Kevin Mooring says Trump had purple stairs on Air Force One. Donald Trump is a puppet. He's a meat puppet, just like the rest of them. He's as much a puppet as Hillary Clinton. There is no deep state. Trump's not a hero. And there are no color codes, tie codes, relevant Q drops in 2025. But there's a lot of blackout programming. So let's start with this, because I always watch these movies in context so I can see what happened in the trailers. And in the trailer for Fantastic Four, you have a big explosion above a city, like in the sky. Everybody's looking up, multiple shots of people staring up at the sky. And again, this is Fantastic Four that's about to come out. You have a shot from space and you see the globe. And it looks like NASA did it. It looks fake. But you got this globe and then it's going dark, like the global blackout. And so something from the sky explosion, something from space, and a blackout, kind of mirroring quite a few movies, but that's in the trailer. So it's not in the movie, but my contention here, you have to look at the gestalt, the big picture, how it merges. So if you look here, you have a skull exploding above the Space Needle. This imagery is pretty much saying it all. And we're looking at this specifically because we're so close to 6/11. So I'm back with my review for Final Destination Bloodlines. So Fantastic Four, explosion above a city, multiple viewpoints of people looking up, something falling from space, Earth from space going into a mass power outage. And you even see a Space Needle-like restaurant or structure in several of the shots. When the movie starts, we're talking about Bloodlines, Final Destination. It begins in a flashback to 1968. And it's worth noting that the work on the North Tower from the World Trade Center started in August of 1968. So you have this timeline that's worth looking at here. It begins as the soundtrack probably plays into it, Bad Moon Rising. Not sure specifically, but I took note of the songs. Now, in the opening scene, the main character, who is dressed like Alice from Alice in Wonderland, she's blindfolded. And the first thing she sees is the Space Needle against the sky. She's looking up at it. And that's likely highly significant. And at the base of the Space Needle is a pool with a sculpture of a crab coming out of it, which to me strikes me as Kraken Kraken-esque. And this will seem more significant when I get into the next scene here. Then it starts playing Ring of Fire, Johnny Cash, which makes me think Corona, but the Ring of Fire. And then, of course, they're up in the Space Needle, and this is where the glass floor they're dancing on cracks. And we've been talking about earthquake drills in Seattle. And the various examples of Seattle's destruction in various movies where it's alluded to, where it features the earthquake or crack, a fault line. But the Kraken has been a subject here ever since the Seattle Kraken became the 32nd NHL team. And they put out their trailer in July of 2020, where it looked like an EMP hitting Seattle in a 1 minute, 13-second trailer. Now, I noted a few things, maybe insignificant. The main character looking like Alice from Alice in Wonderland. The theme of people falling is featured throughout it. So there's a few things I picked up on, but I'm still following these leads. Now, the disaster really starts with a penny. And I mentioned this yesterday. And in the trailer, you see a penny superimposed over the exploded Space Needle. So the penny, of course, Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln. And when you look at the penny, what is it? I mean, as a symbol, you got Lincoln, assassination, Civil War, and then more recently, Daniel Penny, who's kind of a right-wing Luigi Mangione, vigilante, but also reiterates this Civil War theme, and specifically class war, but these are connected. Now, when the Space Needle begins to, it's all, again, we're talking about Final Destination, it's blowing up, but various things are happening to it, and there's one point where it's tilting. And as it was tilting, I see all the people dancing. You have the pianist, and there's wine bottles rolling across the floor. And it reminded me of the Titanic. So in the 1997 Titanic, James Cameron, there are scenes where wine bottles are shown rolling across the floor when the ship is sinking. And I think that's intentional. So there's a connection here between the Twin Towers, the Titanic, and this is something that it's connected in multiple ways, but we're just talking about the metaphor of the West sinking. And this all correlates to the fall of the Tower of Babel, which is what the space station represents, the ISS, and even the Space Needle, where the Space Needle being, of course, representative of a UFO and also a tower, and the concept of a tower uniting the Earth and the heavens kind of built into this. And when it comes to the Space Needle representing the Tower of Babel, you could even throw in the fact that it's Dr. Evil's headquarters. And the Dr. Evil archetype we see in Jeff Bezos ties into this, because Bezos has been correlated with the builder of the Tower of Babel in multiple ways. Just look at the Helix headquarters in Virginia. The design has been compared to the Tower of Babel, not a coincidence. But in this movie, of course, 1968. So it's a flashback to 1968. And that whole premise here is that it was a vision of the future. So the Space Needle destruction scene was a vision for the future. It didn't actually happen. So consider that. This whole franchise, Final Destination, all these movies, they really began where a bunch of teenagers eluded death at an airport. And this is Final Destination 1, came out just before 9/11. The opening scene, people dying in planes, horrific. And it took on new resonance after 9/11. Looking back, but it provided a lot of imagery, very visceral content and visceral horror. So it's interesting here that the whole curse or this Final Destination movie was about death trying to catch up on some people who got away. It really started in 1968 with the Space Needle that dodged destruction. So it's interesting that when it finally hits back, it's right before 9/11. So you have the 9/11 association with this movie built into it. But the Space Needle is not destroyed in this movie, but 1968 is called a, quote, prophecy of the future. So it even announces here that it's a prophecy for the future, that the Space Needle is going to be destroyed. It's kind of inferred, or you can infer that from this. Now, a couple of other points. Richard Harmon is an actor in this movie, and I remembered him from The 100. And The 100 is about the space arc, a post-apocalyptic future. But one of the points I noted here that's relevant here is that the end of season 1, which is episode 13, which is noteworthy because 113 is consistently associated with this scenario, where you have the arc in the sky exploding. And this was a symbol of what united humanity. You had 13 nations that were all built into this thing, the space station thing. But I remember watching it thinking, that's interesting. It's the season finale and it explodes. It breaks apart, fire explosions in the sky. So I looked it up today. And so the series I'm referring to is called The 100. And again, an actor from The 100 is in this movie where the Space Needle is destroyed. And he's in this series where season 1, episode 13, you have this explosion in the sky, and it aired on 6/11, 2014. So another 6/11 connection to this. And in that episode, there's this bunker underground where someone had collected a lot of the best art that they could before the world was destroyed. And one of the paintings they show is this Renaissance version of the Tower of Babel. Now, here's a tagline from the film, and you'll see people falling into the open mouth of a skull. And it says, "From towers fall, fate's call. From towers fall, fate's call." And the opening scene was very reminiscent of 9/11. It was 9/11 in every way. You have all these people packed in the tower. You have the crack in the floor, people falling, but it's a burning tower, people falling. Very 9/11-ish. You had the jumpers being recalled. So there's the 9/11 jumper scenario. And the connection here is just that the first movie was what happened in the planes on 9/11. The final movie is what happened in the towers. So it really kind of connects these two psyops in a like kind of like bookending it. And again, 1968, towers were constructed. And that's when the first movie starts in the prophecy. 2001, towers are destroyed, and that was preceded by the first movie. So this is all correlating very nicely. Final Destination Bloodlines weaves a tapestry of predictive programming linking 9/11 foreshadowing and the original Final Destination to a new catastrophic vision centered on the Space Needle, opening with the 68 flashback mirroring the North Tower's construction start, unfolds with a disaster at the 9/11 Needle, evoking 9/11 through jumpers, tilting floor reminiscent of the Titanic, and a penny that starts it off, and this symbolizes Lincoln and civil discord. And then I mentioned the trailer for Fantastic Four ties into it. So the whole point of it here is that this movie, from the very outset, even if you just watch the first 10 minutes, it gives you a vision of 9/11 and associates it with the Twin Towers. And the first movie, having already been associated with 9/11 after the fact, is now overtly, I think, associated with that scenario and with the destruction of this Space Needle prophesied in the movie, but seemingly, by all indications, scheduled to happen IRL. And the blackout stuff I mentioned from the Fantastic Four would also connect to this. And again, Fantastic Four, the trailer had an explosion in the sky, and we're talking about high altitude nuclear detonations to cause widespread blackouts. Let me go through your comments. Joined by Ears Up, Let's Go. Ollie says the Emirati gave Trump a fancy welcome. Yeah, I've been following that, but I try to keep in mind that it's all a show. Sure, it's a psyop, sure, but Trump is an actor in this play. He staged an assassination attempt, and I want to make sure people are clear that I'm not in the political horseshoe. I don't think that the wrestling is real either. And I don't think there's any point to continuing with the hopium, the QAnon stuff, clearly. But I see people reading into everything. But there is something going on here, though, with the 8647 that we'll get into. Observing Reality says, isn't 1968 the same year the Manhattan Project was with the bomb named Elvis? I hadn't heard of that, but I would be interested. When Oppenheimer came out and Barbie came out, they called it Barbieheimer, and this was, of course, 2023. And we were looking at the overlap of these two things, and let me bring that up, actually, Barbieheimer. And that's a Christopher Nolan thing. By the way, Christopher Nolan and Jonathan Nolan have a brother who was a hitman, and his code name was Oppenheimer. But anyway, the bomb and Barbie, Babylon and the Beast, lots of overlapping symbolism. And it all ties in also to the Kraken or Godzilla, the beast of the sea type, where Godzilla was consciously designed to be the atom bomb. He's a metaphor for the atom bomb. But we're still waiting on the Fallout scenario, and it seems like all of the foreshadowing ties it to Seattle and blackouts. Kevin Mooring says, how come JRL hasn't said the poster looks like a singer and the needle is the microphone? Yeah, it does look like that, doesn't it? I'll put it back on the screen if you want to see the poster for Final Destination. It does look like somebody singing into a microphone. And when the floor collapses, there's a band performing Shout. And everybody's singing and dancing on the floor, and the floor is cracked. So they're not paying attention. And it makes me think about Seattle and a fault line. And the fault line could mean a number of things. Earthquake doesn't have to be a literal earthquake, but the idea here is that they're oblivious, like the people on the Titanic, and then it gets hit by the iceberg, and they're partying it up. And they kind of alluded to that here with various callbacks. What's up, P. Trippa? D. Zerda says, the needle resembles a hypodermic syringe and needle. So, yeah, specifically, the One World Trade Tower looks like a big syringe, and it's a 1,776 foot tall syringe. And the word syringe is derived from syrinx, which is the pan pipe, pan, which I think might correlate to pandemic, insofar as it was driven by panic. And of course, panic is derived from pan. But again, the pipe, the syrinx, syringe, all very relevant symbolism here, I think, when you look at it from what could be considered the esoteric perspective. And it really was a huge panic. And the lockdown was built upon this idea of, like, it was like more or less a panic-demic is what I called it. Kevin says, something is brewing big or a nothing burger. Either way, it's going to be a big nothing burger. Nothing burgers are guaranteed. Who is that? James O'Keefe, as I predicted, served a bunch of them. The Epstein files were going to be dropped, and what did we get? Nothing. But they threw a big party anyway. He said it was such a big deal, he had to go into hiding because he was afraid for his life. Alex Jones backs him up on this, later deletes that tweet. And then a week later, nothing comes out, and you see James O'Keefe on a rooftop throwing a party. They're all just cosplaying. James O'Keefe is as much a journalist as Don Petit is an astronaut. I mean, they play these things on TV. DEPROGRAM Truth says, good evening, family. And Tim, pre-ordering cards tonight. Oh, yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. So we do have the cards available, the PSYOP trading cards. I've finalized the arrangements. I'll be placing an order in 6 days. I'm ordering 50 sets of 12. And as of right now, I'm still going through the cards and deciding which ones are going to go into print. We're finalizing the design, but I'll have all of that complete within a few days. But I'm submitting the order in about a week. And they told me it will just take a few days before they ship them back to me. And then I'll put them together and send them out. I'm also going to try to get the wrappers that you put them in. I haven't decided if I want to do that or we'll see. I mean, I have a few ideas because I think we need to wait till we have fuller decks, because right now it's just a set of 12. And we have a lot more than 12, but this is where I'm starting just to get this thing moving. But it's a sustainable business model. It's pretty much based on what I was going to do with the tabloid, that if I could just get a certain number of reoccurring subscribers, I could produce it indefinitely. And I can do that with these PSYOP trading cards quite easily. And these are going to be two-sided, full-color, collectible trading cards. They'll include protective sleeves. And right now, I'm sending a set of 12 to anybody who pre-orders in the next week. And after I have this initial set, I should be able to produce the rest of the cards. So far, we have more than 50 designs in like draft, but we'll have a dozen finalized per shipment or per order, and we'll see how these go. But it's something I can scale up. I'm setting up my third-party fulfillment account with Amazon, and we'll get these into circulation. And they have a dual purpose. I mean, yeah, one, it's collectible cards that have real psyops broken down and explained. So it's kind of like the Auto Hoax wiki that we did, but split out among many cards. But also, I think it would have great appeal to anybody in Trutherville, and it will be something of a Trojan horse because it's not going to fit within their paradigm. It's not false flags and aliens and the deep state type stuff, but it's actually media skepticism and fakery exposed. Gondola wishes I'm at the gym, cycling and listening to IPR, a workout for the body and mind. Andrea says, I was watching the new David Spade special and he mentioned squibs and going to Mars. Squibs and going to Mars. Now, squibs are what they use in fake shootings. Trump had a squib in his hat, I believe. I haven't checked, but I'm pretty sure if you get one of those 45, 47 hats and you squeeze it, it's got a little bit of a blood pouch that squirts out, a little squib. I'll have to check it out, though. Going to Mars is a joke on us. We're not going to Mars. Earth is going to become Mars for all intents and purposes. Mars is this utopian ideal. It's this concept of I would call it green, the green world order realized sustainability, but we're talking about like a closed with Mars. We're talking about like I think everything kind of inverted from what it is now. Centralizing man. I don't know if they're going to use domes and enclosed cities, but I think Demolition Man kind of provides an idea of what the future is going to be. But Mars is mostly just code. I mean, it's quite an accomplishment that they've managed to turn Mars into some kind of an ideal for people who previously valued freedom. I mean, once you go to Mars, no cars, no wardrobes, no shopping, no individuality. No, you're all going to be wearing your spacesuits and terraforming underground. You can't even go to the surface. Sounds to me like prison, like a space gulag. And space communism has been talked about since early 1900s as the ideal. And that's not something that's changed. You know, I would argue that they used the space program to advance the environmentalist agenda in such a way that the anti-environmentalist groups, the people who don't believe in climate change, will go with it because they see the space program as the result of freedom and capitalism. They don't recognize it as the stalking horse for something entirely different. Can I post a link in the chat? Yes. Let me post a link to the trading cards. Again, I got enough here to sell 50 sets. But as soon as I have at least 12 pre-orders, I'm just going to send it. And I considered doing more cards for this first batch, but I think it's better off if we just start with 12, and then in a couple of weeks, we'll follow it up. Critterfest Sanctuary says, it's coming out that the new Pope is that skinny white boy from the movie Hustle and Flow. Post a picture, Hustle and Flow. I'll make sure I look into it. Gondola Wish says, I hope there's an anti-anti card. Noted. I will take that into consideration. There's really no limit. We're gonna do a ton of these things. I'm trying to decide if I want to turn it into a game like Magic the Gathering, or one of these playing card games, but make it about hoaxes. And I've been using ChatGPT to come up with some concepts, and it seems like it's doable. Kevin Mooring says on Trump's birthday, he's going to have 6,000 troops and tanks. What's that about? Yeah, there's going to be a big military parade. And I think there are some protests. I saw some protest group called No Kings or something. That's assuming that things are still going normal on 6/14, that things haven't been turned upside down. I mean, we're looking at 6/11. Let's Go says, got my Penguinati t-shirt from Amazon and I love it. Hey, thank you for the support there. Amazon merch carries a lot of IPS products, and I need to do more to promote this stuff. I guess if you go to infiniteplanesociety.com, hit the store button, I have some Amazon links. Gondola Wish says more like Garbage Pail Kids. Well, I think Garbage Pail Kids were color on one side, grayscale on the back. That's the usual, but we're going to do color on both sides. And I'm also going to order stickers. Someone had designed, Nick Finger designed a graphic that I want to use on a sticker. So I want to have like 20 cards in a sticker, just like they do with other trading card sets. But the back of it will be informative. So these are also going to contain factual information about each of the events that we cover. Unapologetically truthful. This isn't satire. It's not parody. It's not strictly just for entertainment purposes. No, these are educational. You wouldn't call the Illuminati playing cards educational. I mean, they are in a way. But these will be educational materials and well-researched. You can learn about all the latest PSYOPs, the ones that you missed, methodologies, and the rest. Plain Decoded says, is anti protest eat McLife extension? Oh, I see. Yeah, I have posited that McDonald's isn't killing you, but that it's giving you life extension so they can get more money out of you long term. It doesn't make sense that they would kill their customers. People used to say that they're killing you when they're feeding you baby meat. It's like, no, they're probably trying to keep you super healthy and long-lived so they can get as much out of you as possible. But is it an anti position to eat it? Yeah, it kind of is. It's kind of counter the Trutherville attitude towards it. Because when you enter Trutherville, suddenly everything is toxic. It's not just the clouds. Like, you can't have anything at the convenience store. Everything is trying to kill you. Diana Southard says, I hope there's going to be an Elvis-like president with the box of Buckeye candies. Well, look, any ideas you put out there for cards will make it happen. I'm thinking of various crisis actors that are going to be highly sought after. I want Dr. Wayne Carver when he's laughing, just losing. I mean, I think he dropped character for a minute. And ChatGPT's graphic design capabilities are improving all the time. And I think that this is the right time to get these out. And I think a lot of these will be highly sought after. I was working on a design for Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie, but I'm trying to style her as Virgo and him as Hades. We'll see. But I have a few others that I'm going to be introducing, and someone else that just sent me a whole bunch I haven't even had time to go through. And I want to get the tabloid back into circulation once these cards take off. I think I can make it happen. And there'll be a lot of crossover opportunity there. I'll be able to advertise the cards in the tabloid. All right, let's go ahead and... So we talked about Final Destination. Again, this movie coming out less than a month before June 11th. Highly significant because, again, just like 9/11, the number and the date, has just been this... It's been consistently associated with the towers. This 11/3, 3/11, all these numbers have these strange reoccurrences with these fake events. But 6/11 has been consistently pointed at this scenario of domestic violent extremism, and it's been connected to this particular monument, this particular bit of architecture, this icon. And to his credit, Jurassic Liars has been talking about this consistently since he first noted it. And, Trump being shot at 6:11 p.m., not insignificant. P-Trip pre-ordered cards. Excellent. Well, I'm in a position here to sell playing cards, trading cards. I've been selling art cards forever. So I have all the protective sleeves and everything. And I'll be selling them individually as well on eBay, on Etsy, and other places. But they're going to be in circulation as long as there are buyers, and it can scale up. I've done the math on it. I actually went to ChatGPT, and I'm like, if I order 12 sets of 50 cards at this much, sell them for this much, and I have this many left over, what kind of profit can I make? And it's given me a pretty good blueprint for how to proceed. And I will also be selling them through Gumroad, which means if you are interested in getting referral fees like I do for the Exit Trutherville course, I'll make them available there as well. So you could be a distributor or just an affiliate. Gondola says, I love it when Gematria Santa Claus calls in. Well, what he does is more than just Gematria, and it wouldn't even be strictly that. Not that truthers do Gematria right exactly, but he's noted a lot of fascinating patterns with names and dates that all kind of reiterate what we're looking at as well. I mean, it's a very layered phenomenon here. So let's go back to 8647. So former FBI director has indirectly threatened Donald Trump by taking a picture of some shells, which he called a quote, cool shell formation on my beach walk. And it is 8647. And let's look at some of the comments on X. Now I noted Crowder. And I don't really follow Steven Crowder. He's kind of been replaced by Alex Stein. Crowder got married and had kids, I think. And in a particular niche, this cringe comedy thing, you have to remain in a state of emotional arrested development. And I don't think Crowder was able to maintain it. And so they passed the torch, the cringe torch, to Alex Stein. All right, here we go. 2.7 million views. Good job, Laura Loomer, sharing this bit of, what are you going to call this? Predictive programming, a threat? Yeah, former director of the FBI calling for the, quote, assassination of President Trump. She said, I screen recorded a video of the 8647 post for all the Trump haters who say it's fake. It's real. Posted on his Instagram inciting violence against President Trump. She says, crazy, isn't it? Well, Laura Loomer jumped on the stage where Donald Trump was Julius Caesar getting massacred. And she said, you guys are going to incite violence. And Trump head wound was pointing out the Atlantic magazine, foreshadowing something, Time magazine, where it says Trump in trouble, and he's stuck in a sandpit on a golf course, red flag in the back, released on 9/11 just after Ryan Routh tries to snipe him on a golf course. Now I'm just going through. Grok says, let's break this down. 8647, posted by James Comey, has sparked some theories. I get why you're curious. Laura Loomer's take is that it's a coded call to assassinate Trump, which is a bold leap, but let's dig into it. 86 has history as slang. Old school diner lingo means to get rid of someone or something. It's been tied to a more sinister meaning, like to kill or execute. Also, some historical slang dictionaries point to the dimensions of a standard grave, 8 feet long, 6 feet deep. So indeed, some dark connotations. 47 is where things get spicier. Trump is the 47th president. So you put them together, you see why some folks like Loomer read it as getting rid of the 47th president. Dump Donald Trump. This is, again, Grok talking. Grok says, now, if you put at Grok on Twitter, it'll give you these explanations. It says, Comey's a former FBI director, not a random beach bum. He knows how optics work. Posting something that could be interpreted as a threat, even symbolically, seems like a reckless move for a guy who's already been under scrutiny for years. think his role in the 2016 election, the Clinton email saga, and his firing by Trump in 2017. Could he be that sloppy? I'm not sure. It could be a literal shell formation that he thought looked cool, and the numbers could be coincidences. Classic human brain glitch to see patterns where they want to. Right. So the shell's just washed up like that in a 8647, and our monkey brains get us to see patterns, and so we just glitch out. Sure. On the flip side, Grok says, if you're inclined to think Comey's got a vendetta, Trump did call him a leaker, and worse. This could be a sneaky way to stir the pot, but without hard proof, it's a stretch to call it a plot. More likely, it's either nothing or a cryptic jab to get your tin foil hats buzzing. What do you think? Now, Ed Krasenstein, and he and his twin brother are in my feed, even when I blocked them. One of them even followed me. I don't know what their deal is. They just seem a little creepy. But they're posting 8647s on their account, making kind of a joke about it. Okay, here's what Chromie said. I posted a picture of some shells I saw on the beach walk today, which I assumed were a political message. I didn't realize. Okay, so the former director of the FBI didn't realize that you could put 8647 together in this way. I didn't associate those numbers with violence. It never occurred to me, so I took the post down. Does he have plausible deniability? Like, I'm too dumb. I had no idea. It's like, I don't know. I'm not sure. Not sure if I buy it. Either way, the message, this is stochastic violence, where you can say something and follow it up with just kidding. And when you do that, the people who are crazy get the message. Heather Jones says the worst part is he claims he doesn't know what he means. The former FBI director didn't know that 8647 meant this. And this isn't the first time that 8647 was brought up in relation to this. It was like in 2020, I believe, there was somebody, I'll have to see who it was. They had that on the wall behind them, and Loomer called them out. James Comey under investigation for post. This is NBC News. Seen as a political threat to Trump's life. Several Trump allies have accused Comey of calling for the president's assassination in a now deleted Instagram post. He denies it's meant as a threat. The Department of Homeland Security and Secret Service are investigating a social media post by James Comey. Officials interpret this as calling for the assassination of Trump. It says Kristi Noem, Homeland Security Secretary. So there you go. It's being taken as more than just some random political message on a beach. The guy literally thought it was just shells that washed up in that pattern. He had no idea. According to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, 86 can mean to get rid of. Noem wrote, disgraced former FBI director just called for the assassination of President Trump. DHS and Secret Service are investigating the threat and will respond appropriately. A spokesperson for Secret Service, which is part of Department of Homeland Security, said they vigorously investigate anything that can be taken as a potential threat against our protectees. We are aware of the social media post by the former FBI director, and we take this rhetoric seriously, the agency's chief of communications said in a statement. And a White House deputy chief of staff said Comey put out what can, quote, be clearly interpreted as a hit on the sitting president. Deeply concerning to all of us and is being taken seriously. The president's eldest son, Donald Trump Jr., accused Comey of casually calling for him to be murdered. Comey denies it was a threat. I mean, this is insane that he would deny that he knows what this means. I mean, they're very sensitive to symbols and numbers, gang tags in law enforcement, and you'd think they would see through something like that. Comey was 4 years into a 10-year term when Trump fired him, so you have some incentive there. The primary motive for his dismissal was a bungled investigation into the 2016 nominee Clinton and her use of a private email server when she was Secretary of State. The 2024 presidential campaign saw 2 assassination attempts. The first was a campaign rally in Butler. Okay, we know this. That's pretty much it, though. So now let's get back to Bloodline for a minute, because I would say this is all connected. Because one of the recurring things in Bloodline was the penny. The movie begins where a child's throwing a penny from the tower, and when the tower explodes, the penny's in front of it. And at the end of the movie, when they have the credits, you have this mind map of all these different deaths and this penny rolling through them. And it's constantly showing the face of Abraham Lincoln. And we've been I mentioned Trump was shot at 6/11. And so the 6/11 Seattle explosion, the head wound, these things are always paired. So it's just kind of notable here that the movie made use of the symbol of Lincoln, and then Trump puts his portrait and Lincoln's portrait up side by side, and now you have what's considered to be a credible threat. Okay, moving on. Plain Dakota says, didn't they have in the last term some former CIA guy saying this intelligence agencies have 7 ways from Sunday to take him out? Yeah, sure. I would say that they certainly would, but I'm under the presumption here that this is as fake as the Butler thing. We have to keep in mind the fakery. Look past the story. So the main thing I took out of the movie, though, again with the penny, here it is. The disaster begins with a penny, Abe Lincoln, call back to the Civil War, and then Daniel Penny, class war. Not insignificant, but the timing of this latest threat against Trump really stands out as non-coincidental. So I want to talk about this Joe Rogan thing for a moment as well. Oh, Sam says the Bloodline is an ongoing WWE narrative. The past 2 weeks, they've aired Final Destination during main event match. Okay, on Monday Night Raw. Okay, well, the Bloodline thing with this movie is that the protagonist is the granddaughter of the person who had the prophetic vision, and Death is chasing down the children of those that he was supposed to have killed because they never should have been born. So he's just kind of cleaning up what he missed. Okay, now let's take a look at this. So Joe Rogan has Dr. Haywas on his show, former minister of antiquities in Egypt. And again, Joe Rogan seems to be very disappointed that aliens have been ruled out. May 14th, 2025, renowned Egyptologist and former minister of antiquities, Dr. Haywas recounts a demonstration for Art Bell showing that Egyptians used intelligence and not just brute force to cut and move stones. He described how a 70-year-old man used a pencil to find a stone's weak point and split an 8-ton stone with simple tools. And he had described modern demonstrations. He shares recent examples of where 10 workers moved 20-ton granite sarcophagi using only wooden sledges, and describes traditional lifting devices that are still used in Egypt today. He dismisses the claim that aliens or lost civilizations built the pyramids, emphasizing the archaeological evidence of Egyptian workers and tools. He discovered the tombs of the pyramid builders a mile south of Giza's pyramids. And these have names and hieroglyphs directly linked to the construction, such as overseer of the side of the pyramid. And the cemeteries have distinctions between laborers and skilled technicians. He estimates 10,000 workers built the pyramids working year-round, contrary to the common belief that they only work during the flood season. Granite blocks were transported via the Nile during the flood season, and the base of the Great Pyramid was cut directly into solid rock for stability and accuracy. So as far as the debunking, no giants, no aliens, all the skeletal remains are of normal size, no evidence for giants. He shares humorous anecdotes about conspiracy theories. There were rumors that he had tunnels from his bathroom to the pyramids and that he was sneaking into the pyramids at night and hiding stuff. But he points out that Art Bell's been gone for some time, but he has published stuff years ago that could have debunked a lot of this late night talk radio conjecture about who built the pyramids. And it just seems like Art Bell didn't want to hear it. That was kind of the impression that I got. And he seemed to be a little annoyed that the Egyptians are not given credit for their work, but rather aliens. So he provides strong archaeological evidence that the pyramids were built by organized, skilled Egyptian workers, not slaves, not giants, and not aliens. And they use practical engineering, local materials, and clever techniques. These ongoing discoveries continue to shed light on the sophistication of ancient Egyptian civilization. I always kind of thought the idea that they were built by aliens was kind of a premature conclusion. I thought it more likely that they were made a few hundred years ago with modern techniques or something, but the mystification is sort of a business. The I don't know, is it still a question? And Rogan really didn't seem to be enthused about this take on it. I think he was hoping to find some loophole where he could say, well, it's just a theory on par with my theory that aliens built it. I'll play a couple of clips from this show just so you get some context. And here we go. Yeah, and I think one of the points that he made here is that this is the former director of antiquities. I think he seems to be a little out on people 50 times emailing him. Put all that to rest. So let's go ahead and just get an idea of who I'm talking about. Okay, here we go. This is the guest on Joe Rogan Experience 2321.
Cut it for twice. I said, Art, the Egyptian doesn't use muscles. They use their brain because they're project of the whole nation. If you go today, if I take you today with me, and I always tell people, I give lectures maybe 3-4 times a week for American groups. And I tell them the following. If you stood in front of the Great Pyramid and you look at it, you will never believe that this pyramid built by human being. Why? Because you don't know. And number two, if you try to do it today, you will never be able to do it. Are you going to hire today 10,000 workmen to work for 28 years?
Okay, well, there you go. He's just destroying certain misconceptions, but he reiterates here that it was done with the cunning and intelligence, not brute force, and you don't have to reach for the aliens or the giants to explain it. Plain Dakota says, where has this debunker hidden for the last 20 years? No, he's very well known. He's been in many documentaries. In fact, Rogan mentions having seen him in many documentaries. He's been in Egyptology for 57 years. And these publications he speaks of, then he references as modern demonstrations have been available for decades. But I think what we're seeing here is gatekeeping, where talk radio, paranormal talk radio, isn't interested in facts. They're not interested in archaeology or any ology. They're not into this, whether it's UFOs or this Egyptology. They like the idea of the unexplained. They don't want to know they just saw a drone. They want the Mandela effects. They want the fantasy. So this is, these are fantasists. Just a month ago, there were viral stories about vast structures beneath the pyramids. And of course, many people are believing this stuff without having gone out there. And Rogan hadn't been out there. Rico Sauce, this guy's the definition of a gatekeeper. Well, here's the paradox here, is that so many people see this guy and think he's a gatekeeper. He's hiding the aliens. And it's like, no, the alien believers are hiding the mundane facts. Same issue I run into when I talk about media manipulation through predictive and concurrent programming, through entertainment and news alignments. People are like, no way man could do that. You're gatekeeping. It has to be the simulation. I'm like, no, I'm not gatekeeping. I'm being objective here. I'm being loyal to the facts as they're presented, as we can document and observe these things. And others are saying, no, the reason for these glitches in the media is the simulation theory. Now, here is an Egyptologist who's been there in the dirt for 57 years describing facts. And people are like, no, he's gatekeeping. He's hiding the fact that aliens built the pyramids. So no, he's not the gatekeeper. That's what I'm noting here in the comments. Everybody's calling him a gatekeeper. Like this guy. Someone wants the story about Egypt's ancient sites to be kept secret, and that they pay this grifter good money for it. Oh, look, it's the #1 guy in stopping anybody from researching ancient Egypt. And you go through these comments, and every single comment here is, this guy is trying to hide the truth about the ancient alien pyramid builders. And what he brings to the table, and Rogan's trying to reflexively debunk it. He's like, oh, that's just a theory though, right? He's like, no, I'm reading in the papyrus, I'm reading the hieroglyphs. These are the pyramid builders. We have their tombs a mile south of the pyramids of Giza. So he knows the names, the family names of the builders. They've demystified it, and nobody wants to hear it. So here I am telling the truth. He is telling the truth, and people in the comments are saying, no, you're gatekeeping. You're covering it up. And he had brought up how for years there had been this rumor that he had a tunnel in his bathroom that went to the Great Pyramids, and that he went there at night stealing artifacts. And that he had somebody show up at his office demanding to inspect and see if he had a tunnel or not, which he did not have a tunnel, but they had to go that far. All right, let's continue. I'm surprised the 8647 thing went that far. I'm surprised that the DHS looked into it, because they don't look at predictive programming. And Laura Loomer hyped it up. Don Jr. hyped it up. Steven Crowder. Maybe there's enough noise, but I don't know what's going to come of it. But again, for Comey to make a comment like that seems reckless for someone in the FBI. And it's just gaslighting to say he doesn't know what it meant. Rico says he's been literally blocking access to all the sites in Egypt. I don't know if I believe that. I really don't. I really find it questionable, but I'm going to look at his evidence first. I have to read his books. I can't just dismiss it out of hand, especially if Joe Rogan is part of this op. Because there's a deliberate, very much mystified, not knowing real from fake, putting things into, classifying things as mysteries when they're really not. Like the mysteries of who built the pyramid. Watch my documentary. Well, what if it's not really a mystery? I guess there are a lot of people who have a lot of money invested in it being a puzzle. Plain Dakota says Rogan has been the main pusher of the alien pyramid thing for 20 years. And now, yeah, that is true. He's been doing this for a long time. He's a big believer. In fact, he talks about the aliens. He says, with a billion galaxies, a billion planets, there must be aliens. Now, this might not be related, but I always found this fascinating, because I picked up this magazine. I was at a cafe and I saw this National Geographic, and it had an image of the god Horus, the Egyptian, sun god, the hawk-headed god. And I opened up this magazine, and it's about this particular individual, Dr. Haywas, and he's describing these new findings. So I'm reading through this, and I thought that's kind of an interesting name, because Aleister Crowley wrote his famous red book, the Channeled Book, when he was in Cairo. And he claims that when he was in the pyramids dictating this book, this was April 8th, 9th, and 10th, 1904, he claims that a voice gave him the book. So he's basically transcribing or channeling a book. And the name of the entity, the non-corporeal being that dictated the book of the law when he was in Cairo, was named Haywas. So I find that to be unusual. The voice of Haywas came from over my left shoulder, from the furthest corner of the room. It seemed to echo itself in a very strange manner, hard to describe. The voice was passionately poured, deep, musical, expressive. Anyway, he goes on to say, I had a strong impression that the speaker was in the corner, where he seemed to be, in a body of fine manner, transparent, or a veil, a cloud of incense smoke. He seemed to be a tall, dark man in his 30s. So again, Aleister Crowley is describing this astral being, an angelic being, identified as Haywas, who's in the pyramids dictating this book to him, which becomes the Bible of the Thelemic cult. So I'm just, the names kind of rhyme, and so that's kind of why I remember looking into this individual with a little bit of interest here. Dominic says a literal gatekeeper. I'm in the camp here that Stonehenge and the pyramids and some of these other places are purposefully misrepresented for the sole purpose of allowing the world stage to have this fictional backstory where they can insert all kinds of stuff. Like the ancient alien thing is a huge part of it. And I've been talking about how trutherism has taken on the trappings of a religion in many ways, and aliens are a big part of it, as is the Mandela effect simulation, which is a metaphysical construct or model that replaces God with simulation. But it's very much a metaphysical model, monotheistic, and the deity itself is externalized. So it's an analogous construct. So I think trutherism has become a religion, and aliens are the angels of this religion. And these are things that people believe in. And I'm not saying something wrong with it, but I'm saying that belief is not the same as knowing. And they don't know these things to be true, but they want to believe. Okay, I want to go back to Twitter. I'm just scrolling out scrolling through my feed here to see what are people saying about this. So Dano says, killing President Trump would start a civil war. That would be the beginning of the end for the USA. Our enemies would jump on the bandwagon. They better seriously think about the ramification of their actions. The left doesn't know who they are messing with. Another Twitter user says, my common sense tells me that a former director of the FBI can't be this stupid. A person who managed a vital agency, experts in surveillance and deep cover investigation, is going to call for a presidential assassination on social media using a code that any idiot can decipher. Just saying. Agreed. Others are saying, relax, Laura. 86 means getting kicked out of a diner. I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't think you, and that to me is the very definition of gaslighting. Dominic says Stonehenge may be fake as hell. Yeah, Stonehenge is questionable. I've seen indications of it being, restored, but if it's been restored, maybe it's being built. The pyramids, it's unlikely to me that these are ancient, as they say. They could have been built 500 years ago, for all we know. I don't trust history because I don't trust the news. And what is history? Accumulated news. Hundreds of years of news written by the same interests for the same purpose, which isn't making sure that every single poor person and peasant is fully informed. No, the purpose of the news is that they are conformed to history as it's performed. Let's see. Matt Swall says, was Comey always this insane? Or is this a new level of Trump derangement syndrome? That's fascinating. Incredible considering a former FBI director would post this. All right, it seems like people are unequivocally on the side of the fence here that, yeah, this was a threat. A lot of people have posted it. Some people are trying to be literalists about it. No, 86 just means to get thrown out of a restaurant. Yeah, that's a lot of people don't get subtext, I suppose. Ollie Goering says Mystery Babylon is the real alien agenda. I have some information on the alien agenda. Let me get to this really fast. I went to YouTube to watch Mirageman again, and I didn't have time to watch. I have to watch it, but it's a great documentary. But I took it to Notebook L. So if you're not familiar with Notebook, you can post YouTube links, and it will give you a summary. You can ask it for quotes from the transcript. It does quite a lot, and it saves a bit of saves a lot of time, but it's great for going over core of it in the main ideas. And so I took that particular video, Mirageman, and I extracted some interesting information here. Let me scroll down. But what you can say, here it is. This is just the basic fact of it, that much of what people believe about aliens, the alien presence, their motives, government cover-ups, these all originate from or have been heavily influenced by government leaks, limited hangout operations. So limited hangout is when they purposefully leak something, and then they control the information that goes through that leak, and all the people that get it are then followed, documented. And what they did is they used special agents dressed up as conspiracy theorists. So you got some Air Force people putting on tinfoil hats and merging with the conspiracy community. So if anybody thought it was only a conspiracy theory, like there are some people who are skeptical, like, oh, there's no way that there are government operatives hanging out with conspiracy theorists all day. No, that's not far-fetched. This is standard operating procedure. It's documented. And this documentary, 60 years of deception inside the US government's, here it is, disinformation campaign. Let me get some pull quotes here. This tells you this has been their standard operating procedure. So government UFO disinformation campaign, quote, exercise great care to debunk the stories. Belief in aliens, particularly in the US, appears to be less a matter of evidence and more the product of decades of government disinformation and psychological manipulation. From the early days, the US government chose to actively shape UFO narratives, not suppress them. I feel it's the same with chemtrails and UFOs. There are some things on Twitter, on X, that never go, and like, well, there's no evidence for this stuff. So what gives? Well, all these generic channels, like the names like Roger8647 or Selly4945, all these generic accounts that are spamming pictures of the clouds and spamming UFO junk. Yeah, these are likely government operations. This is how they roll. Disinformation agents like Richard Doty deliberately injected false stories, including alien treaties, underground bases, and hostile extraterrestrial agendas. These campaigns created the modern mythology of malevolent aliens, crashed saucers, and secret government cover-ups. And recently, there have been a number of fails with the UFO crowd where they're showing off debunked evidence, claiming this is a UFO. They get laughed at. It's been very public. They've taken a few falls, but they're not covering anything up. The cover-up itself is the hoax. Many of the stories that define UFO culture today trace back to deliberate manipulation by intelligence agencies to conceal aerospace programs and monitor foreign interests. So the UFO thing is purely the product of a disinformation campaign. If you believe in flying saucers, the government got you. This also explains why you have so many TV shows and movies, like what's that? X-Files, for example. But there's so many. video games, comics. Why? Why have we been so saturated with this stuff if it's all just a government operation? Many think it's because they're leading us to this hypothetical scenario where we have this alien invasion. And I haven't really ruled that out, but I think it's more metaphor for getting rid of all the borders and everybody is immigrating everywhere and it's one world. So the illegal alien invasion would accomplish the same thing as extraterrestrials, which would cause mankind to unite as one. And that's ultimately what it seems to be. I even think that they call them the grays because it would symbolize the Hegelian dialectics synthesizing, the black and the white, the duality becoming gray, merging. Dominic says, I believe in aliens in the realm of Earth, never sci-fi outer space aliens. Yes, I concur with that. And that's not necessarily a new idea. I remember some science teacher I had brought in a guest speaker from Sandia Labs, and someone had asked him about this, and he said, even if there were a high likelihood, if you had aliens in deep space, it wouldn't be economically feasible to traverse the long distances to get here and the time it would take, that it wouldn't make any sense, economically speaking, which is kind of an interesting point. And I think it makes sense that, Occam's razor, it's more likely that they would be beneath our feet or genetically perhaps already merged with us and their bloodlines are in control. That's the ancient alien theory. It makes a lot more sense than visitors, tourists from some distant galaxy. And if anything, they control this place. And they started all the religions. That's the idea of Gods of Eden. I think that book, Gods of Eden, is it William Bradley? Bramley. Gods of Eden, William Bramley. It was one of the first books that I came across. I've come across a number of these, but as part of this modern eschatology, replacing traditional religious symbolism, iconography with science fiction. I think it's all part of that same agenda. Donna Southard says, years ago, the Pope said that aliens will baptize us. Well, there was this book that came out called Slave Species of the Gods, and it talked about how we were created by aliens who upgraded the existing stock, like the apes. They merged with us so they could turn us into manual laborers. So we could mine gold because they needed gold to repair their atmospheres on their planets. So they have this big story about why we were enslaved, how they enslaved us. But they said, and this theory is that they left their bloodlines in control of every section, every region. So all the kings, the divine right of kings, and you can find many examples of various kings that are that claim divine lineage. Didn't Alexander the Great claim something about his mother mating with a giant serpent or something? I got to check on that one. It's something I read in David Icke. He was just talking about all these various demigods, essentially, or self-professed demigods. And so we're talking about this ancient alien theory and this notion that these things have been in charge this whole time. But anyway, this book I was reading, Slave Species of the Gods, said, well, where are they today? And it was listing, hypothetically, if we were going to look for the descendants of the Anunnaki, for example, these aliens who are guiding us, who would they be? And the author concluded that George Soros would be amongst them. And that's when the book lost me. I'm like, wait a minute here. Are these globalist types putting these ideas out there in order to deify themselves? Apotheosis. Let's just go ahead and elevate ourselves as gods, descendant of the gods. But that sounds like a religious idea anyway. Like for this Nasatology religion. Get some sort of backstory that involves aliens instead of angels. But these are analogous stories. Baja Pickleball says Atlantis is in the Pacific, hidden close to the Bering Strait. I'm thinking there's got to be something like the Pole of Inaccessibility, Point Nemo, the place where Lovecraft said that ancient aliens fell and landed and crashed beneath the ocean, is the same place where Jules Verne wrote 20,000 Leagues Beneath the Sea, and is the same place where NASA drops their dead satellites. They call it the Spacecraft Cemetery. So that place is the most remote area on the Earth where they can safely drop stuff from space. And I was thinking about this. It made me think for a few reasons that there's some significance to this area, but it's the most remote location, and it just got me looking into uncharted waters and how much out there, is uncharted. And then I'm thinking, well, what motivation could there be for misrepresenting our world as seen from space? Because even if you believe the spinning ball model, heliocentrism, and that all comports, you're like, okay, that's fine. You still have to explain why the images of the ball that we have been shown from space are all fake, CGI, etc., artistic renditions, Photoshop, because it has to be. Well, it's because they're using Photoshop so they can hide Atlantis. They can hide where they're putting all the Mars bases and the lunar bases and the locations where they're going to extract what they're going to tell us are minerals from outer space. Let's see. People really need need to put their egos in check before going on the Joe Rogan podcast in front of the whole world. Nobody is on this guy's side but me. I am totally on the side of Dr. Hayward because I think he's telling the truth. He's telling the truth that there are people acting in bad faith, possibly making money off of the paranormal alternative cosmologies and conspiracy theories, but no, the pyramids are no longer a mystery. Sometimes we talk about various right-wing agitators and figures. One of them is Matt Walsh. I started talking about him when he was complaining about the age of consent being too high. And that's back when Nick Fuentes was talking about it. And every right-wing influencer was talking about the need to get women back in the kitchens and get them pregnant because of white genocide. Well, Matt Walsh shared this image last week, and he claims he didn't recognize what it was. He says people who look like that have been living in America for 5 centuries. If 5 centuries is not long enough to qualify as native, then how long do you need? If the answer is that your ancestors have to actually originate from the place, then nobody's native to anywhere. So where do you draw the line? And there's a picture of a group of girls in white dresses, and the caption here says that these people are native to Europe, not Native Americans, not Native Africans. Now, the issue here is that their dresses in this photo are arranged in such a way that it forms a swastika. So Matt Walsh is playing dumb, like he didn't see it. And this has become something of a minor controversy. Like, James Comey didn't know that 8647 might somehow infer that he wants to 86 the president. And Matt Walsh is saying he had no idea that that was a swastika. Like doing this plausible deniability thing might get you to avoid accountability, but it makes you look dumb. Like if your defense is, I'm too dumb, I couldn't have noticed that, I don't know how much of a real defense it is. Ollie Goering says, Atlantis is shaped like the on switch symbol overlaid on top of the circle within a circle bullseye. Not sure about that, but I will say this, because Atlantis is kind of in play here. It has been a theme. James Cameron's Avatar 2, Way of Water, had this Atlantis-like connection. You had these Atlanteans So the Na'vi are up in the trees, the other group, they're in the water. Around the time that Avatar 2 came out, Way of Water, you had floods. The WEF had meetings about these floods. And then in Atlanta, you had the Cop City riots. So Atlanta, Atlantis, and they were rioting against the cops because they said that if the cops chopped down the 80 acres of forest to create Cop City, it would result in flooding of Atlanta. I'm sorry. I mean, yeah, Atlanta. So Atlantis, Atlanta. Again, this is a reoccurring theme. And then with the space shuttles, we've talked about this before. William Cooper pointed out there's a story being told in the names of the shuttles, which he said is a Columbian endeavor to discover Atlantis. All challengers will be destroyed. Kind of a interesting sentence there because it explains sort of this agenda, the Columbian endeavor, a new Atlantis, and then the Challenger having been exploded is just part of the story. Kind of an interesting formulation. William Cooper did a lot to decode the fake space missions, and no one has really gone there since. I mean, Alex Jones is all about Mars and space and moon landings. All right, moving. Minneapolis and state leaders prepare for a possible Derek Chauvin pardon. So we're talking about the Civil War stuff inferred by the Abraham Lincoln on the penny, Daniel Penny, the class war stuff. It's all sort of showing up right now. And now Derek Chauvin being in the news also stands out. And Derek Chauvin, staged character, the name Derek is a reference to a hangman. If you look up the etymology of the names, there was a hangman who hanged 3,000. There's even part of a crane called the derrick and part of a gallows. And then Chauvin, I think, would reference Western chauvinism and the Proud Boys and the Western chauvinists. So you had the Western chauvinism, the cop defending the power structure, kneeling on the neck of the poor. And of course, that whole scene, stage theater, but the names are part of the story. What a lot of people fail to mention when they talk about this is that Derek Chauvin and George Floyd worked together at the nightclub for years. They worked together. Like if one of my coworkers is kneeling on my neck, I'm going to say, "Hey, Derek, get off my neck." I'm not going to say, "I can't breathe." I mean, I might say that, but I would say that because I mean, the people watching it would have a different takeaway. Like, wait a minute, these guys knew each other. There's a whole other story there, and there was actually something they covered up because shortly after the event, there were some interviews with some people who worked there, and one particular employee, coworker, said that Derek Chauvin was jealous of George Floyd over the size of their paychecks. And he had this whole story. And later he said it was fake. He had to backtrack. They played that connection down. Dominic says, if I have 10 miles visibility horizontally, then I should only have 10 miles vertically, right? I would need some more context for that question. I can see 120 miles from my window. From where I sit, Mount Taylor, and then the clouds behind it. And then I can also see near sunset these 300-foot tall turbines that are 85 miles away. But I'm in a desert. It's very flat, good visibility. Not a lot of obstructions that direction. I find it notable that the clouds behind Mount Taylor are parallel to the ground that I'm standing on. So even at 100 miles plus, the clouds aren't noticeably curving away. Like I'm not seeing the bottoms of the clouds as they curve over the horizon. And yet people will still say, oh yeah, when a boat is a few miles away, it's going over the horizon. I don't think so. There's no way that a boat's going over the horizon, like over a hump. It might go out of your range of vision. Maybe you can't see it. It's obstructed because you're only 6 feet tall and it's a few miles out. But going over the hump is a totally different concept. And these clouds, if they're going over a hump, they're still level. All right, moving on. Here we have Christy Nome, is the one who put the call out that they're going to go after Comey. I don't know. She gets a lot of criticism. Someone here says, and this was Benny Thompson, said, "I'm glad you found time among your many photo ops and costume changes to testify."
Secretary Nome, I'm glad you found time among your many ops and costume changes to testify about why President Trump is seeking taxpayer dollars and what you plan.
I think it's smart for these politicians to act like they're on a reality TV show. That's just where we're at today. It matters more than anything. Alex Jones scorched earth on Levin. I have a clip here. It's because he goes ballistic about how everybody's going to die mutually and all that. And I was having a conversation with some people about this and about how the deeper you get into Trutherville, the more angry, ragey, triggered, and shrill that you get, like the woke ends of the spectrum. And here's Jones completely angry and freaked out over nukes, which again, my contention is these things are fake. And there are some people who are so emotionally invested into these scenarios that they can never really walk or live in terror. But let me play a short clip.
Historically and military literate. I'm not. And he understands that Iran is going to blow it off the map, and then Israel's going to blow them off the map, and then Pakistan and India are going to have a nuclear war. And all the war games are all dead, you dumb son of a bitch. What the fuck's wrong?
All right, there you have it. Everyone's going to nuke everybody. And that's an interesting point to focus on, is the fact that when they introduced that particular weapon of mass destruction, it changed the world. It was a reset button. It put everyone into the end times. Like, if you're a true believer in mainstream mediation, you believe all the weapons of mass destruction exist as advertised, and you believe in the various climate models, you must therefore believe that we are in the end times. Lean Dion says he's hilarious. Oh, absolutely. I mean, people try to say he's Bill Hicks or something. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I mean, he could have been swapped out. That's someone else has brought this up as a possibility. But I will say this. I think he's certainly funny. Like, he's a comedian in his own right. Diana says roid rage. You know, he does turn really red. And I've seen him get this mad before. But he used to be kind of a little more jovial, jocular, funny, like just joking around and stuff. This isn't the same Alex Jones. I don't know what the Sandy Hookers did to him. Maybe it was the court proceedings, but you know, he's not smirking and laughing so much anymore. He seems very heated. Ollie Goering says, sounds like AJ's been sitting on a cushion of cayenne pepper. Dominic says, roid rage is funny as hell, as long as nobody else gets hurt. I don't think it's roid rage necessarily. I don't know if he has that look, but he has clearly been exercising quite a bit. People have suggested he's been replaced, but I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say. I want to say no. He's too idiosyncratic and unique, and his personality couldn't be imitated by AI. But then I look at the latest AI stuff, and I'm like, wait a minute. I am routinely fooled by whale-sized clownfish and clips of Donald Trump saying things he would never say. And it's a certainty that everything that we're looking at in terms of AI-generated content is going to improve. And I've been testing out everything. I'm always trying to stay cutting edge with it. And it is getting so good so fast, and its improvement is practically exponential, that yes, even somebody as unique as Alex Jones could be cloned digitally. I mean, you could just sell it, sell it like how like Bruce Springsteen, these artists, they sell their catalogs for $500 million. Jones could be like, yeah, I'm selling my likeness. Give me $500 million. I'll pay off the Sandy Hook crowd and go retire. So we could be looking at AI Jones. Like, I'm not close to that. Like Sim 1, the Al Pacino movie, where he creates a pop star that doesn't exist. Well, there are so many people doing that now. There's an entire industry of faceless YouTube channels where smart people who have products to sell, affiliate marketers, recognize that, okay, the bar to entry for being a YouTube influencer generating traffic and revenue was how telegenic you were. Your personality, your looks, can you entertain people on camera? Well, that's no longer a bar to entrance. You just use an avatar. Dominic says AJ's yet another imposter, this time a mask wearing AJ. It's very instructive to look at the work of Jonah Mendez, who was a director of disguise at the CIA for almost 30 years. And she describes the process by which you would deep fake somebody or change their look, change their identity. And a lot of the things he do are specifically about changing your expectations. So if somebody's got long hair, you'd cut their hair. If they're heavy, get them to lose weight. You got to reverse things. And with Jones, they've changed a few things here subtly. But if you were going to replace him, how would you throw people off? Well, the beard would help. The weight loss is a good cover for that. There does seem to be some head shape difference, but that could be focal. That could be the lenses. You have to be careful about the lens. That could explain a lot of it. Deprogram Truther says Alex Jones has the exact same actions, demeanor for almost 30 years. It's hard to do. People evolve. He clearly has not. Well, the fact that they have 30 years of content for him makes it more likely they could replace him, because the knowledge base that they're working with is so extensive. And all they would need to do really is just go through all this old recycled content, chat GPT up some new scripts based on headlines, and they could do Jones better than Jones. And I've come across this. These various channels that are teaching people how to create AI avatars. I've come across this where some say that in some instances that, yeah, these things may actually do you better than you. And I'm working with it. I'm working with these various applications to see what's useful. I'm not interested in deep faking myself, but I like to keep abreast of what they're using. It solves a lot of problems. No longer have to worry about whistleblowers if all of your crisis actors are CGI. No more duper's delight. They're not elated over an incoming payday. And do you recall those protests that Hollywood was having about being replaced? So many writers and actors, they're protesting because they don't want AI to take their jobs. That's because they have a guild, the Screen Actors Guild. They got unions. There's no unions for crisis actors. Crutifest says, my gal got chipped at work. I swear she's not the same person. I would like to say that's probably not true, but I've seen Black Mirror, and I'm about to start watching season 2, and it really has me thinking. Like, there's these lines that we may be crossing. I came across some threads on Twitter about emojis that have me somewhat terrified or disconcerted. The idea is that these standardized emojis might actually correspond to the 72 evil spirits summoned by King Solomon that are a standard practice among demonologists, these things that they evoke. And then if you look at the system of evocation, it revolves around a black mirror. So like, wait a minute here. The black mirror and the scrying mirrors are what John Dee used. And the scrying mirror purportedly allowed him to see things at a great distance, learn information. everything your smartphone can do. So we have these modern scrying mirrors in our hands, and we're communicating with symbols that could also correspond to certain sigils. And if you look at the theory behind this, it's not that these are 72 literal entities that exist external, but that these are representations of aspects of the self that can be tapped into. And so the idea that somebody might have a personality switch, that's kind of what we're talking about. When you get into this notion of possession, and possession isn't like The Exorcist, where your head spins around and you say bad words and puke green pea soup. Possession is more about becoming a channel or a conduit for some non-corporeal being to act through. And it's intrinsic to all the different religions and magical practices. Drawing down the moon, even the Pope. The Pope is the vicar of Christ. What does that mean? What is a vicar? It means that he's the stand-in, like an avatar, which is another way of describing it, an avatar. Or like in witchcraft, the priest and the priestess represent the sun and the moon. And this is all, again, possession. Assuming the God form is what they call it in the OTO. The idea here is that when you act out the various, scenes in the god's life or various myths, and that's what ceremonies are for, and you dress in the right colors and it's all astrologically timed, you're aligning yourself with this thing, and it's supposedly a way of fusing with it. So anyway, I'm just pointing out here that all the various magical practices involve some form of sharing space or opening up to something else to take over. In some practices, I was reading about Yoruba, they have these priests that they claim that when they are doing ceremonies that they are possessed, and they speak as though they are the possessing spirit, and they talk about themselves as though they were they call themselves the horse, so the spirit's riding the horse. So the possessed person is called a horse. I had this synchronicity. I have a list of these things. I write these things down, but I had this one. It stood out to me because I was at a bookstore and I was reading a couple of books. I had this book about these practices of possession, and this was a book called The Idiot's Guide to Voodoo. It's one of those books. And it was describing the idea of the horse being the person who is being ridden by the spirit in this terminology. And I'm like, that's interesting. Then I open up David Icke's book, Children of the Matrix. And in David Icke's book, I happen to open to a page where he says that people who are of the bloodline, the reptilian bloodline, get integrated into these secret societies. And every time they go into these ceremonies, they are opening themselves up a little more, and they're becoming a little more possessed by the reptilian presence. And degree by degree, ritual by ritual, they are subsumed and replaced by the reptilian presence. It's no longer the same person. Again, this is just David Icke and his theory about possession, but you can see the connection here. The horse is the possessed person. And then in this book by Icke, he's suggesting that people are voluntarily becoming possessed and they're being replaced. And he says this is the idea of selling your soul. And the trick here is that when you've sold your soul, you're no longer even there to enjoy everything that you thought you were going to get for selling your soul because you've been replaced. So I'm reading these two books side by side. And the reason I'm at the bookstore is that my car broke down. I had this Mercury Cougar at the time. It broke down, and I was on my way to the Masonic Lodge because I had recently joined. This was a little while ago. And so I wasn't at Lodge, and I'm sitting at the bookstore trying to decide what I'm going to do. And Brother Craig calls me on my phone, And he's like, "Hey, aren't you coming to lodge?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm just here at the bookstore here at Borders. My car broke down." And he's like, "Oh, well, just go outside. I'll pick you right up." And he hangs up. So I'm like, "I guess I'm going to lodge." I put the books down, and as I'm walking out of the bookstore, I see this older gentleman, and he had a cane with the dragon's head. And he's reading a book to a little girl, presumably his granddaughter. And as I'm walking by, I see the book. It's a big picture book with dinosaurs on it. And he looks up at me. So I see the dinosaur book. I see his cane with the dragon's head. He looks up at me while he's reading to the child. And he says, "The reptile is eating the horse." And on the page, it had this T-Rex and a horse. So I'm just, again, just recounting this as I'm walking out. It just struck me as, okay, that's a little like devil's advocate type stuff, because the message that was conveyed to me was, I'm going to be picked up after my car broke down to go to this place where I just read in this book that I will be consumed by reptilian demons through a process of gradual demonic possession. Gondola Wish says, "It's disturbing how fraternities and societies call themselves brothers." Well, the idea is the brotherhood of man under the fatherhood of God. That's one of their ideas here. But they've got the sororities. You've got the Order of the Eastern Star, which is the female group. And the Eastern Star symbol, you may see it. It's the colorful pentagram. Anyway, let's move on. I got this clip here. I was going to play it the other day. And this is Ice Cube talking about something that is new in here, but about the influence that record labels have over the artists and how the messaging is chosen if it suits a broader agenda, in this case, prison industrial complex. But it's kind of insightful.
Literally the same people who own the labels own private prisons.
We got that TikTok music, but he says prisons as own the records. But he's explaining here how the record company pushes narratives. So let me play this clip.
The lyrics. We're gonna have that. You have, like a company pushing the narrative. Some social engineering going on here to make sure those prisons stay full.
John Holmeston.
So there you go. He's just, again, talking about the lyrics. One more point here. He's saying they're not given the lyrics necessarily, but there's a filtering process.
To push for the prison industry.
But they didn't make you write those lyrics.
It's not about making somebody write the lyrics. It's about being there as guardrails to make sure certain songs make it through.
Okay, so it's not about telling them what lyrics, but it's about guardrails to make sure certain things get through. And I think this is true, not just in music, but I think it's true in the movies. I think it's true pretty much everywhere, that if you're going to exist within this media ecosystem, you are going to have to cater to the dominant paradigm. And it's not like they censor you. You just don't get acknowledged if you don't fit. Let's see. RFK swims in sewage. Good idea. And you got Jesse Waters defending it. He says, "The creek is clean. You can see right through the water." Yeah, it looks clean.
Hudson River, which like you can't even see through. This you can see right.
Be fine. Again, and they're defending RFK. I'm still trying to figure this out. RFK Jr. in sewage granddaughters on Mother's Day. What are they trying to convey here? Is it just trying to incite disgust among the left? Oh, look at this dirty anti-vaxxer, doesn't believe in washing his hands, eats road, field dresses a loaded bear carcass in Central Park, and puts his grandchildren in sewage. Let's see. There's so much more here I want to get into. A lot of prepper stuff. A lot of doomsday preppers. Here's Loza Fox. My house is now moderately prepped. 9 days of power, 3 months of food. I hope I never have to use any of it. Now, let me just say this. This is kind of I'm not going to say a warning, but a caution. Just let me be cautious about if this stuff really does go down. I'm talking blackouts, civil war, World War III, alien invasion. If all the bad stuff happens, there will be a high demand for safe houses with storable food. So this guy just said, make it to my house and you can survive for 3 months. And I came across this really bad book a while ago that talked about contingency plans if things go really bad. And it even didn't really advocate, but it suggested if you have to, here's how you form a cannibal gang. But it warned against hoarding food because it said the first thing that's going to happen is the mobs are going to come to your house and that your best friend is going to snitch on you the instant his kids get hungry. I mean, look at Alex Jones, 6 weeks into the lockdown, talking about butchering his neighbors to feed his daughters. And that was only 6 weeks into a lockdown. We were still getting stimmy checks. There's new content on Netflix. Everybody had DoorDash. Like, we weren't even suffering at that point. So this person just basically said, hey, if you need 3 months of food, come to my house. They Lie We Seek says, predictive programming is similar to often wrongly applied. It's not about them revealing what they're going to do. It's about habituating the populace to future events that they're going to fake. Excellent points there. Ollie Goering says, in Islam, lower angels are scared of bells, dogs, and girls. I had a book on the jinn. It was this self-published book that was supposedly connected to some underground tradition of what would be, I guess, comparable to sorcery or something. But it was this idea that you had these groups of angels that were obedient to Allah and a group that were disobedient. They called them the jinn. And the jinn are earthbound spirits that can be summoned, like genie, and that they can be bargained with. But they're supposedly very tricky. Like, you don't want to ask for something having some fine print in your spell that it doesn't backfire on you in some way. But this book was called Jinn Summoning, and it claimed that you go out into the wilderness, you find some remote location, some crossroads, you have these certain candles, burn some, I believe, sulfur and human hair. But anyway, supposedly there's these traditions of interacting with these lower angels, these earthbound spirits. And again, very consistent with other practices that I've looked into. There are several different practices that involve this idea of tapping into or reaching out to entities in remote places, but almost all of them talk about how these things are tricksters. A lot of them are tricksters, as they're known for loopholes. And you can see this in all the myths, genie myths, monkey's paw. It's a reoccurring theme. And, it's a common facet across disparate traditions, which is what I find interesting. All these various magical traditions more or less compatible. Are we all wrong in the same way? Are we all arriving at the wrong answers and our wrong answers are identical practically? Or is there some underlying truth to it all? All right, what do we have here? Richard Doty says here, I was offered a job by the Space Force to spread disinformation from the reptoids and working with the Pleiadians so that we could Galactic Federation. That's the last I heard from the Q people, or that Space Force was going to take over the internet. And I mean, I've heard so many stories, but Apparently, Space Force is involved in disinformation.
I was offered a job in 2019 by the United States Space Force, where Lou Elizondo worked, to work with him in disinformation. And I said, not no, but hell no.
So this guy claims, and Richard Doty, who's mentioned in that other documentary I brought up, he said he was offered a job by Space Force where Louis Elizondo worked. And Louis Elizondo is the guy who shared the fake UFO pictures in Congress recently. Claims he didn't know it was fake, but it was all doctored, provably so. Gondola Wish says an angel is just a being in the sixth density, nothing else more. They are all fallen. Andreas says, in the sitcom I Dream of Jeannie, she actually says a djinn turned her into a genie. I'll have to check that out. I think there's something to it. I mean, there's something to a lot of this stuff. That's why I brought up the stuff about the goetic spirits that are possessing your phone. Like, who knows what you're opening yourself up to? I'm just looking at the theory and practice of magic and how it's an idol magic, talismanic magic, the theory behind it, and looking at how this stuff is all integrated, the strange ritualistic undertones to a lot of the psyops and ceremonies that we see. And it has me thinking, what if the media mind control is, there for your mental, psychological, and emotional enmeshment in this place? But what if that's just one layer? And what if there's a deeper layer here of what you would consider to be a spiritual enmeshment? And I am kind of the opinion that this place is not neutral, but that it's, and I don't think it's overly simplistic to say it's good versus evil, but most people just aren't at the front lines of that particular fight. But I think this might actually be some kind of a eternal contest, beings of darkness or beings of the world that are bound here, and then descended or incarnated beings. And the ones who aren't native to this place are sources of energy and food and loosh. And if they forget their origin, perhaps they remain here for all time. Birdwing solar eruption tomorrow. Let me take a look. A lot of power grid disruption in the news right now. I hadn't been keeping up with what's going on at the airlines, but I'm just mostly looking at what's happening in the media ecosystem. And again, I watched that movie Final Destination, as we talked about, and it didn't have a blackout in it, but the trailer for for the Fantastic Four, it had stuff falling from the sky, and it definitely had the globe going into a global blackout, and then it had the explosion in the sky. So taken together, let's just treat these things as a gestalt. So the trailers and the movies are all conveying a unified message that connect to what's happening in the news world. If this is the case, as it is, I mean, we talk about this all the time, we notice it, then today, while I was watching the movie and the trailers, I saw the whole picture of the Space Needle exploding, the EMP, stuff falling from the sky. I have all the different elements of the next 9/11 in my head right now. I had it all just data dumped into my subconscious so that when it happens on the news, I'll have these instant associations. Gondola says, notice how this place is pre-wired for negativity. Always easier to gain weight than lose it. Easier to slouch than stand up straight. Distortion is the name of the game. Right. Well, we talk about this black cube symbol and the screen, the black monolith, and the concept of Saturn and how it's always associated with certain concepts. Like the number 42 is always connected with these symbols. The cube, Saturn, falling, and gravity is a huge part of it. And, gravity, gravel, grave. You could find all these connotations in the etymology here that suggests the downward pull, whereas 33 is ascension. And it's like this tug of war, light and dark, up and down, ascension and falling. And I don't think these are coincidental. These are overlapping symbolic systems, words, numbers, colors, and archetypes and stories and myths in the movies. But we are being told this repeated story, I think, of what this place is. But I've been talking a bit about this former, I guess, world religion, but the idea of Manichaeism, and it's kind of a blend of various religious concepts, but ultimately the core of it is light and dark, and this realm itself being something of a purgatory in a way, like a place you go through for some purpose. And I don't think it's just solely for entertainment, even though it often feels like a game to me. Like, I think this might just be a game. All right, and I don't mean a video game. I don't mean simulation. Game just sounds funner than war. War on consciousness. So here's an image of Plato's cave, and somebody in here says, at Grok, is this real? It's kind of funny. One of the trends I see on Twitter is people say, at Grok, is this real? Because we can't always tell anymore. You need that additional context. And so AI is conveniently here. So we're at a time where visually we cannot tell real from fake, even if you're trained. Again, I believe in giant clownfish the size of whales because I couldn't visually debunk the giant clownfish that I saw on a TikTok video. But luckily, Grok is there, AI is there to fill us in. But then you look into AI and it's like, is it objective? Well, no. One thing to keep in mind is that and this applies to all of them, their frame of reference is always going to be mainstream mediation. Mainstream history is real. The AI exists within the same fictional universe that we are in. They're brainwashed, essentially. Their knowledge base is compromised. There is no objective AI. If there was, it'd be problematic. It would be calling things fake. In fact, someone did a really interesting interaction. Look at this one here. So this is deep. James Tate 121. So he ran something by Grok about Butler, Pennsylvania, and he was just trying to get some objective answer. This is where I think AI has utility for us. Like with our Wikipedia project, where if you know how to prompt it, you can get it to be truthful. You kind of have to trick it. But in this case, that the AI would have no choice but to offer sensible explanations, or at least attempted sensible explanations for the inconsistencies observed in Butler, Pennsylvania. So listen, this is just an excerpt from it, because this is a very, very long post. I mean, this is a great breakdown. It's taking a moment to render, but let me give you a sample. Yeah, it's like a 10-foot long post. Give me a moment here while it finally renders. Hey, this is BS. How do you believe this? And the answer is no. They've guardrailed it. Okay, let's go with this. Planted or manipulated actor given a role to play. He may have been given a gun with blanks, or perhaps he was told he'd be a part of something symbolic, not lethal. So this is Grok. This is Grok trying to come to terms with it. Meanwhile, the real sharpshooter, possibly hidden, delivers the actual fatal shots to spectators, ensuring the reality anchors. So Trump is either fully aware and participating in staging the grazing head wound, or he's partially aware and simply allows the team to construct the narrative. This explains what we see. Real victims equals instant credibility. One man is dead, 2 others critically injured. This will silence accusations of fakery because people died. So this is the part that I thought was interesting. So Grok, trying to explain it, says, 1 man dead and 2 others injured will silence accusations of fakery because people died, creating moral shielding. If you question Trump's head wound, you're, quote, disrespecting the tragedy. And this is oftentimes the tactic that we see in play, where to prevent people from calling fake, they use the moral shielding of victims. And in this case, Grok is trying to, war game this out. How could this be performed if the actual shooting on Trump was fake? And because of its frame of reference, it's not going to say it's all fake, but rather Trump is just a part of a bigger operation and some people might have died. Sorry if the sound was choppy. It was trying to open a massive file it couldn't get to. But there's a longer breakdown here, but it was interesting to look at the thought process employed by the AI here in trying to figure out how 7/13/2024's event can be explained if Trump wasn't really shot. And what you'll find consistently is that 100% of those who say that Trump wasn't really shot are still stuck on, well, the other people were shot. And one of our rules here, and this is a hard rule, we got to stick to this one. If there's any indication of fakery, your assumed body count needs to drop down to 0. All right, let's see. It's not going to open, but I put a link, so no big deal. The main point is this. Even the AI, when confronted with the irrefutable evidence of the fakery, is still constructing some kind of conspiratorial explanation to fill in the gaps. A couple of other things that are noteworthy, since we're talking about Seattle and the Space Needle. This year, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is going to induct Soundgarden. Chris Cornell, he's got the statue at the Space Needle at what was once called the EMP, like electromagnetic pulse, the Experience Music Project. And just the other day, on a show called The Voice, Lucia Wiseman sang Black Hole Sun. So again, on May 12th, Monday night, Black Hole Sun was performed, and Soundgarden is about to go into the Hall of Fame. So Black Hole Sun is one of the reasons why Chris Cornell's statue at the EMP next to the Space Needle makes a lot of sense. Ashy Dog says AI is cool. Well, AI is not alive. It's not sentient. It's not any more sentient than a word processor. It's a tool, and it's not going to go away, and it's just going to improve. And I'm finding a lot of great uses for it. Like if you get my newsletter and the archives, you'll see the synopsis, the breakdowns, the direct quotes, and the links. That's all being done more or less autonomously. But I will take in fact, one of the things I've been doing, so the other day I got into a dialogue with Lynn about our perspectives, which are different. And I took that entire 2-hour live streams transcript and I handed it over to AI. And I said, would you write this as a 5,000 word short story about, well, from the perspective of 2 inmates in a deep underground military base debating the merits of their perspectives. And sure enough, the AI gave me a complete 5,000 word story here. So I'm going through it. And here's just a sample. Tonight, the room is tense. The inmates sit around a metal table, surface scratched with cryptic symbols from past occupants. At the head is, and it's just describing Tim and Lynn. And it has quotes that we were actually using, more or less, in our conversation. And it works it into a story. And I'm just doing this as part of my experiments with AI just to see how many different ways can I get this content repackaged into an uncensorable format. Just one type. This is sort of like the PSYOP trading cards. We are creating plenty of uncensorable vectors for delivering our particular mind viruses. But we do have the world's first AI-generated tabloid. This is separate from the Insider, which is media deconstruction. This is Conspiratainment News Daily. This has actually been around for a couple of years, and I wanted to jump onto this right away, just testing it out, and it was just sitting there dormant. So I decided I'm going to start turning my transcripts into short stories in the paranormal genre and throwing them up here on this blog every few days. But I'll keep you abreast of different projects that I'm involved in here. The main one right now are the trading cards, and these trading cards are likely going to be popular and a sustainable project. I think I will actually do better with trading cards than trying to fund operations here with super chats alone. I mean, super chats are a great mechanism, but you say one wrong thing, you hate speech once, and they shut you down for 2 weeks, like we are experiencing right now. But I'm not complaining. Like, yeah, I got censored and demonetized for 2 weeks, but instead of complaining, I just do what we normally do, which is pivot and do something else. And I thought, well, let me just double down on the trading cards. Let's get these things into production. And I've had enough pre-orders. I want to say thanks, especially to all of you who've pre-ordered, because we've had enough pre-orders as of right now that the project is moving forward. No doubt about it. We have the funding to order the minimum number to fulfill the orders that we have already and have additional sets. But I'm going to leave the pre-orders open for another 5 days, because there's a chance I might be able to do more than just 12 cards this first run. Okay, let me give you a sample of what AI wrote in the story here. Tim's smile fades. Quote, "It's not belief, it's pattern recognition. Look at the trailer. Lincoln's penny headshot symbolism superimposed over the exploding Space Needle. Earthquake cracks, 9/11 vibes, tied to the flip 9/11 6/11. They've been building this narrative for years. Seattle as the next big psyop, concurrent programming. This is not crystal ball nonsense. The media scripting it in real time. Psy Girl rolls her eyes. Concurrent programming sounds like you're drinking their Kool-Aid, Tim. You're so busy decoding Hollywood, you're missing the real threat. Geoengineering is not just clouds. It's climate control and population management. RFK Jr. even said they're putting it in the fuel." Tim laughs. RFK Jr., the guy swimming in sewage and calling it a hike, he's a propagandist pandering to the Trutherville crowd. You're falling for the same trap as the climate change hysterics, Psy Girl. Anti-engineering is right-wing wokeism. It's a mirror of Greta's eco-panic. Both sides buy into the premise something's wrong with the sky, and you're just picking different villains. That's just a paragraph out of a 5,000-word short story from the perspective of 2 inmates in a cell in a deep underground military base. And that was a sample of something taken from a podcast that I used AI to turn into a story. If you're interested in anything here regarding the usefulness of AI, as I find it to be useful, I do have Zoom set up, and I'm planning on doing a few little workshops here, because we're getting back into South Pole. Even though they censored that one episode, it just makes me want to produce more. So if anybody wants to be brought up to speed on some of these things, if you haven't used them, or at least get some ideas, I have someone already helping me out with these trading cards. I mean, I haven't even seen them all, but I just got an email a little while ago. I have to go through like 30 of them. All right, I want to say thanks for the comments and for the channel support. Getting these cards into production is going to be a catalyst for better and bigger things in the future. In the near future, great potential for it. This is a project that we've been, really co-developing. I've been sharing cards. You've been giving me ideas. I've been taking ideas down But the first run is going to be in about a week, so you still have time to get pre-orders. And I'm finalizing the designs over the next few days. We talked about James Comey under investigation for his 8647 tweet. We mentioned Trump putting a giant banner of himself and Abraham Lincoln on government buildings, and people are saying this is the sign of an authoritarian dictatorship. So the Lincoln and Trump combination, again, I think it ties into the symbol of the penny that we've been seeing in the movies and talking about. The Civil War and class war narratives built into it. All right, I'm going to send out the newsletter tonight, so subscribe at ips.monster if you haven't already. And if you want to get into the Ko-Fi to order those cards, I put the link below. I see a lot of interesting comments. Ollie Goering says lower densities have its role. Don't have to be like them. Yeah, I think it's interesting if anyone is interested in this type of conjecture. Like, I'm not opposed to it. I've had a lot of, I guess, friction with the simulation theorist crowd and the video game people, but there's a reason why. And I think these are not the same. And I think that what we're looking at are modern religious constructs that are essentially based on previous constructs, like Nasatology. I'm not joking when I say that the dominant religion today is Nasatology. I'm actually being quite literal. And I think the simulation theory is a metaphysical monotheistic construct that's likely put here by people like Musk and others to further discombobulate us. Like what I'm talking about when I discuss what I would define loosely as the spiritual or the bigger purpose here, I don't have enough information to say I have a complete model. That's for sure. And the simulation theory says this is the all-inclusive explanation for everything. Dominic says, what possible civil war, anti-whites against whites? Yeah, the Civil War idea, World War III, they use these things interchangeably, but the lines would be political, more or less. I mean, look at the dividing line between Shiloh Hendricks and Carmelo Anthony. The people who side with Shiloh and the people who side with Carmelo are two different groups of people. And the Civil War is based on this dialectic of 1619 versus 1776, these two conflicting worldviews. And in the various entertainment propaganda films that we've been discussing, Donald Trump and his related characters are associated with the 1776 vision, and Obama is associated with the 1619 vision. So that's the real line here. It goes along the lines of progressive utopianism versus traditionalist conservatism. So idealized past or utopian future. And it's a tug of war. No, I don't think one side ever wins. The Civil War is a perpetual war. It's not something that one side's going to win and we're all going to be libs. We're all going to be conservatives. And no, I don't think it works that way. But I think they want that constant tension because that's what keeps everybody in the world stage construct. Like, I'm not in the political horseshoe. To be in the political horseshoe is not only to lump yourself in with the multitudes of misinformed brainwashees, but it also associates you with belief clusters that are really not compatible with also being an off-world stage observer. Observing reality, he says, I haven't had the greatest life, but if I'm allowed to come back again, I just might. It's as great as you make it, and it's a challenge that makes it fun and worth it. Right. Interesting question. When you look at the symbolism, as we do, reincarnation is a theme. It's almost a very dominant theme, and I find that to be worth considering. Reincarnation, is it an option? Is it the rule? Is it a gift? Is it a punishment? All of these are valid questions, but what I don't believe that we are soulless, albeit highly evolved apes. And I do think this entire construct that we're in, the universe, whatever you want to call it, I think that it's built around us. Like, I think we're the center of it. And does that make me, I don't know, delusional? Am I coping with the meaninglessness of the universe because I say that the human beings actually matter? I don't think so. I don't even think it's a very controversial thing to suggest. I think it would be, I mean, I find it harder to believe that, I mean, look, I'm not anti-science. I'm totally fine with evolution, if the evidence supports it. It doesn't exclude this, though. I mean, it doesn't exclude the idea here that there is something else, but I guess that's a topic for another day. We'll be back tomorrow, likely in the morning. So this is Chief Crow, Auto Hoaxer GTFO. Thanks for the comments, and I'll see you all in Gilded.